if you want. My name's Kerry McKiernan. I'm from Cincinnati. By most definitions, I'm a marketing guy. I've been at it for about 35 years. I run an agency in Cincinnati that spends most of our time planning and delivering and optimizing paid media campaigns, advertising campaigns for dealer groups, business owners just like yourself. At a core belief, we live, Metropolis and Pleasantville are very different. All of you live in unique business environments in terms of your size, your core product, the resources that you have, the money that you spend, what the competition looks like. So I've made my life under that belief that everything from an advertising perspective has to be locally planned and optimized. Optimized is a fancy marketing term that just means refined and improved constantly. So to make advertising work hard, you have to optimize. You have to pay attention to it all the time, and you have to continue to adjust as you get through it. I've spent a ton of time in home improvement, home and leisure. In fact, I'm strategically involved in a partnership with Watson's. Casey referred to Watson's, who's a ginormous advertiser in Cincinnati, has a national presence, and has really been a good model for other businesses like yours. But I do a lot, and I'm grateful for a lot. And before I forget, Casey, Clarissa, thank you for having me. Great food last night, great music, a little bit of booze, some good people. Danny, you want to hit it? So somebody told me that if you want an audience like this to pay attention, to be engaged, you got to tell them a story. You just can't stand up here and blah, 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 blah. The picture on the left is a Christmas wreath. It's not exactly my Christmas wreath, which is about 5 feet wide. I hang it above my garage every Christmas. It's got lights on it. The hole in the ceiling next to the Christmas wreath isn't exactly the hole that now is in my garage ceiling, but it's close. I've hung that wreath before. Had a house for 30, 35 years. I like to do stuff on my own. If I can do it on my own, I'm going to do it. But it was Sunday, a couple of weeks ago. It was right before Christmas, and I went to hang the wreath. And the hole in the roof kind of speaks mostly to distraction, right? It was a Sunday afternoon. The Bengals and the Chiefs were going to play a big game at 4:30 Eastern. You may have some football fans. I am. I was anxious to play. Wife was inside getting the tree up, getting the decorations going. I needed to get the wreath hung, which I've hung many times before. But I had to get up in the attic, and you're walking across 2x4s, and it's pretty slippery up there. But I got distracted. I had a tenderloin to put on the grill. I had some beers to put on ice, right? My wife had a list of stuff to do, and people were coming over. So I'd been up there, and I jacked with it, and I just wanted to go check one thing, make sure everything was hooked up, and I was all tuned in. The next thing you know, I was falling through the roof. I was distracted a little bit. The point in telling the story, and again, I believe you all come from different business environments. You all have some degree of marketing knowledge or interest or what you're doing, what you're not doing, who's doing it for you. But what I can tell you for sure about paid advertising today is it's not that complicated. You probably can do it on your own. I could, under normal circumstances, hang the wreath. But it's easy to get distracted. You've got people to pay, orders to run, product to order, accounting to handle. And to really make it work hard, advertising that is today, you got to pay attention to it. You got to optimize it. So I'm certainly saying that there are plenty of you in this room that can handle your advertising by yourself. There are some that probably can't or shouldn't, and maybe there's some in between. I want to speak to that a little bit today. Danny, if you want to hit me. How was my story? Anybody go through something like that? Not bad? It's the truth. So there's a ton to marketing. Jenna did a great job talking about social, organic, posting. I'm going to talk about paid media, paid advertising. Marketing people have this tendency to use words that they understand and assume that everybody else understands. But based on different levels of experience, I'll do my best to find somewhere in between. If I say something you don't understand, and it would be my interest, man, if anybody's got a question, just stand up immediately. You guys have been sitting there a long time. I'm going to try and hold your attention, but we can mix in questions anytime you want. But I'm going to try and speak to you in a voice that most of you will understand. If there's something you don't, just stop me. But today we're just going to talk about paid media, advertising. You might hear me use the word tactics or channels. It all means the same thing. It's just different advertising products. Danny? Some of the realities that all businesses have to live in terms of things that you have to know or be familiar with. You have to know your category, the demographics, who's buying, the economic issues, what's current price point for comparable product, right? What does the competition look like, right? What technology should we be using or are they using in the category to connect consumers with your business? You for sure need to know your customer, called the hard target, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but who's buying? How do they react? How do they behave? What do you know about them, right? How should you be talking to them? How do they expect to be talking to? I'm from Ohio, right? It was funny, we were sitting back there having a cup of coffee and Boca Bob wanted a little bit of cream for his coffee. And they came out and the nice person dropped almond milk on there. I'm from Ohio, I think some drink almond milk, but I couldn't help but thinking how things change depending on where you're at. So anyway, your voice needs to change. In different markets, you speak to customers in a different way because your customers are different. Socioeconomically, racially, ethnically, right? So know how to talk to them. How do they behave? What social groups are they in? Right? Where do you find them? How can you connect with them on a local level? Again, most of what I'm going to talk about is paid media. There's this other piece to your advertising plan that has everything to do with you connecting in your community, spending time at different places, events, shaking hands, building relationships. It's humongous. And you have to know your trade area. Your trade area is my world for, Casey used the term ADI, and in most cases you are going to deal at a market-wide level, but depending on where your brick and mortar is, it may not be as easy as targeting an ADI. Paid media today allows you to target in a lot of different ways. You can target based on proximity to your location. You can target based on zip codes, right? So understanding your geography is an important part. And depending on how much money you have or the strength of your business, you have to understand how big your audience is. Casey talked a lot about frequency. He used the number 4 in terms of kind of a common frequency to get a message across to somebody, right? The basic math is I would prefer, as a marketing guy, I'd rather tell 10 people something 10 times versus tell 100 people something 1 time. So frequency matters. So depending on how much money you have to spend, it's going to depend on how big of an audience you want to target. But those 3 things, right? Knowing your category, knowing your hard target, knowing your trade area, all important. I like to score geographies. I like to prioritize where I want to be, right? And some of that can be done on paper, but most of it's going to be done just from your brain because you know the areas you live. You know the best neighborhoods. You got a feel for it. So I like to score geographies to make sure I've got a good idea in my head of where I need to be. Something I might hit on in a few minutes too, it used to be that you would talk demographically, right? You would try and assign a value to an age. And maybe in your category, it's adults 35 plus, somewhere along lines. Might lean a little bit towards male or female, depending on who's making the decision makers. But anymore in today's digital and social world, you're not targeting demographically. You're targeting behaviorally. You let the impressions come to you, right? There's a huge audience of people out there on social media and digital media and all the platforms that they live in, whether it's Facebook or TikTok or Instagram or Google. They all know what they look like. We target behaviorally. Let your impressions, let your advertising go where they need to, where the audience is. Don't try and dictate age, income, home value. All right, Danny, how am I doing? Anybody? Questions? Anybody? All right, here's my basic philosophy on strategy. There are no silver bullets. I told you, Metropolis and Pleasantville, very different. Local advertising success has very little to do with some big idea that came out of a boardroom, and it has everything to do with the consistency of your plan, continuity, and locally planning and optimizing, right? Everybody's got big ideas, and you can sit in a marketing meeting, and someone will come up with something, and some will agree, and some will not agree. But then you go chase an idea. It has nothing to do with big ideas. It has everything to do with how consistently you message. Jenna said something that was unbelievably valuable, and that was, you have this tendency, you'll put a plan together, you'll run it for 3 weeks or 3 months, and you'll decide it wasn't working, so I'm going to cancel it. It's just a terrible thing. Marketing never works as well or as poorly as you think that it does. Consistency of plan in your category where there's an extended buying cycle and behavior is critical, right? Some of my core beliefs: no budget, no plan. You know, we'll talk a little bit about assigning an appropriate ad to sales budget, but figuring out what that looks like for you financially. I think that the number, Jen had said something about 1 to 3. In my experience in the category, it's probably 5% or plus. I'm not trying to scare anybody. It can be whatever you want it to be. I'm not a person that argues over budget. My job is to take your budget and help you put the best plan together for it. But in my experience in your category, you're probably closer to 5 to 7.5%. But you can't have a plan without a budget. I would tell you that share of voice and share of market, marketing terms, are directly connected. What that means is your share of the spas that are being sold in your market versus the competition are directly related to how much you're spending versus your competition, right? It's not a 1-to-1 ratio, but generally advertising works. That's why there's so much of it. Share of voice and share of market are directly connected. I would tell you that the road to conversion, the road to a sale, is paved through awareness and engagement. I'll talk more about it, but we've got the 3 steps on the consumer's path to purchase: awareness, engagement, and conversion. Somebody has to be aware that you exist, what you do, what your brand name is, where they could find you, kind of how you look and feel. Then they have to engage you. They have to click on your website. They have to click on an ad. They might make a phone call. They might stop by. And eventually the end goal is a sale, a conversion, right? But it's pretty rare that someone's just going to pop in or going to see your ad one time and decide, I'm going to buy today, right? It's a buying cycle. And all of these tactics that I'll talk about in a second work together in like a big ecosystem where awareness feeds engagement, engagement feeds conversion. I would be very careful of what I call last touch attribution, and it's probably something you all do every day. You have this interest in being able to assign every customer that bought from you. I want to know exactly what drove them into the store. And you're probably going, I ask them. We ask every customer. And you think that's the answer. Well, it's not. Millions of impressions out there. Think for yourself how many ad impressions you see every day. And if you went and bought something and someone said, hey, how'd you hear about us? You'd say the first thing that came to your mind or maybe the most recent thing. Chances are that came a long way, and their path to the purchase was influenced by lots of different messages from lots of different people, including your reputation, how many stars you had on your rating, but most importantly, just time and coincidence. They thought about it, the season's right, I just got my money, I can do this now. There is no doubt. And Jenna was 100% right, and we believe in measuring media every day. Every single day, we want to get a grip on what's performing, how well. But the concept of trying to tie every advertiser back to a specific source, it'll drive you crazy, and it won't be accurate. I would tell you, if I had a t-shirt on and I had a slogan on, I'd say the bottom line is always the bottom line. Right, in advertising, the game is to drive sales. And the most effective or the most sensible, in my opinion, of measurement of local ad spend is ad to sales percentage. What did you spend in advertising and what did you get back? And I'll walk you through in a few minutes what that looks like. For each of you, it could take a different shape and how you report it and where you pull your data. But the bottom line is you can for sure get caught up in looking at the analytics of every media and every ad dollar you spend. But at the end of the day, the measure that means most to me is what did you spend and what did you take to the bank? And making sure that number's always going in the right direction. If we budgeted for 5%, then we want it to be 4.5 or 4. We want to constantly get more sales for what we're spending. Danny? This is a look at, how we kind of think about things between awareness and engagement and conversion. And there's lots of different tactics, vehicles, channels, whatever you want to call them, that you can use in your advertising mix. It'll for sure depend a lot on where your market is, how much you're spending, what your competition looks like. But very commonly, for businesses like yours, these are the things that we would recommend or that we would typically use. When you talk about awareness, digital display, things that you get on your phone or on your tablet or on your desktop. Digital display ads come in lots of shapes and sizes, but typically pretty small, and you see a lot of them. But they can be delivered programmatically. That means that we can deliver the right ad to the right person at the right time, and we can decide essentially where they're going, and we can for sure measure it. Online video is a humongous part of the world today and should be part of the plan. You can for sure deliver video across any number of channels, from YouTube to digital display and lots of other places. Most of the things in awareness, in this awareness channel, we're going to measure in terms of a cost per thousand. Like, how much did it cost us per 1,000 people to get my message out? You might keep your eyes on a cost per click, right? It's a little harder to measure clicks from a video, but a cost per click would be a secondary measure to something like that. But in awareness, we're trying to get just in front of people. We're trying to get our brand image, our core product, what the price point is, right in front of as many people as we can at the right time. Because the next goal is to move into engagement. We want them to click. We want them to hit the website. We want you to call. So when we get into engagement, most commonly we're using social, paid social. Jenna talked about the difference between boosting a post and using a Facebook ad platform, which just gives you a tremendous amount more information for planning and data collection. So you could for sure be boosting your post, but you should, for the most part, be living in a paid advertising world with Facebook, Instagram. I think TikTok probably plays less of a world in your world. But we want to move towards engagement. Facebook's a little funny now because it's a little harder to measure conversions than it used to be, and they're always changing the platform. And if you didn't know it, Apple can now, if you're an Apple user, which I am, you can opt out of all the tracking. So for a lot of people in Apple, they won't track you on Facebook. So it makes that number, that conversion number, a little complicated. But for us, when we get into engagement, we're going to measure it against a click or against a website view to physically get you to a storefront virtually. We do a lot of what we call acquisition email, which is essentially emailing non-customers. We'll take your database, we'll figure out who else is in the trade area, and mail them and send them an email. We like email for a couple of different reasons, although people kind of shudder at getting too many. Just a big platform where we can show product and have direct links and just tell a bigger story than you typically could on another social media. Again, conversion is the end goal. And for conversion, for us, we had some questions about print. We tend to put print inside of a conversion channel. When I said we were talking about paid media, the things we're not really talking about and need to be a big part of the plan are things like CRM, customer relationship management, which is a big part of how you use print, and staying connected to people that are already your customers. What we call in like the home improvement category, we do a ton of sit no sale. We made a presentation to somebody, they didn't buy, we for sure want to stay on top of them. That's more CRM. We use print a decent amount for conversion, but the biggest tools for conversion are paid search, the things that Casey was talking about, paid search on Google, and retargeting. And those things, paid search and retargeting, should be on your plan 24/7, 365 without exception. Should never turn them off, ever, right? Paid search for Google. Remember, you're paying for the click. You're paying for the interest. You're not paying anything just to put the ad in front of somebody. You're paying for them to engage you. So it's a real lead coming from a real shopping customer. And we can for sure measure those conversions, right? To kind of pick up on what Jenna said, a little bit of conversion. I support, like, we do a ton of pizza. Right, for conversion, it's pretty easy for us to tell who bought the pizza. Once they submit the order online, I know what a conversion is. It's a sale. Conversion in your world could mean a couple of different things. I would guess very few people, if you have an e-commerce site, I would bet very few people are actually buying a spa online.